Welcome to TFI Tuesday, where members of the State Support Team, Region 5, will share tidbits of each of the Tiered Fidelity Inventory features. We hope you will find these short discussions meaningful and beneficial to your PBIS team. And now, here's this week's TFI Tuesday tidbit.
Welcome back to TFI Tuesdays. Today, we have a special guest from our team here at the State Support Team Region 5. We would like to welcome Jennifer Walker to our episode today. Hello, Jennifer. How are you doing today?
I am excited to be here. Thanks, Jessica.
Well, thanks for coming. Well, we wanted to discuss the connection between our weekly topic, which is the Tiered Fidelity Inventory, and the Reading TFI. So, Jennifer, can you tell us what is this R-TFI, who completes it, and why do they complete it?
Sure. So the R-TFI is the Reading Tiered Fidelity Inventory, and it offers an elementary version and a secondary version. It was recently updated in the fall of 2022 to provide a more precise roadmap for the specific reading practices and instructional focus to be applied within an MTSS framework. It's a tool that can be used by the school leadership teams to access the fidelity of implementation, to identify what parts of their MTSS are already in place, what may need to be improved, and what may need to be done to improve literacy instructions across the building. The tool focuses on the integration of reading and behavior to strengthen the MTSS model. The R-TFI is divided into two sections. The first section focuses on universal Tier 1 supports, or those instructional practices that are across all core content classrooms, and then as well as the advanced tiers. So the R-TFI is completed by the school leadership team, and for the advanced tiers, members of the multidisciplinary team. And these can really do an amazing job of providing a guide for teams to strengthen the reading support for all learners, including students with disabilities. Teams then use the results to understand their current levels of implementation and then prioritize areas for professional learning and examining their progress over time. So the R-TFI focuses on data, systems, and practices or programs that align with MTSS core features and then complement the behavioral components of an MTSS framework.
Thank you for that explanation. I thought that was very helpful. So are there any direct connections in the R-TFI to the school-wide PBIS TFI?
Definitely. So one of the items within the R-TFI asks teams to assess if, quote, all teachers are using evidence-based methods to provide a safe and effective learning environment by attending to 7 specific evidence-based practices. For example, developing relationships through culturally responsive and sustaining teaching practices, teaching and reteaching the classroom procedures, or reteaching, right? And using data to inform any improvements that may be needed. We know that teachers cannot fully implement literacy and instructional strategies if students do not feel safe and if an effective learning environment is not present. If the purpose of MTSS is to ensure high levels of both academic and social success for all students, we cannot talk about students' academics without also addressing their social emotional needs. So when determining what a school currently has in place to meet Tier 2 and Tier 3 needs of students and what they may need to add to their current structures, the results of the R-TFI and the TFI together can tell a much more complete story.
Jennifer, you're bringing up a very important point about the correlation of high-quality instruction and meeting the social emotional needs of our students. As literacy teams are assessing Tier 2 and 3 literacy interventions, they need to keep in mind there's 3 tiers of PBIS in the building. In our last full episode, we discussed the importance of classroom procedures in Feature 1.8 of the TFI and how expectations, routines, acknowledgments, and the continuum of consequences are all in line with the school-wide procedures and expectations. From what you've heard in the field, have literacy teams been able to make the connections between the TFI and the R-TFI?
Jessica, that's such a good question. When teams are assessing their levels of implementation of literacy strategies, they sometimes fail to make the connection. And literacy is talked about in a vacuum. Tiered literacy instructional supports fall into one silo, and PBIS universal and tiered supports fall into another silo. When trying to figure out why a literacy strategy may not be fully implemented, a lot of different reasons are brought up, but rarely is the classroom environment seen as something that either can positively or negatively affect students' learning.
I've noticed in some PBIS team discussions, there also seems to be a disconnect between the academic struggles and behavior concerns. We talk about the motivation for behavior and the possibility of avoidance as a reason for the behavior, but I think we could do a better job at considering if the avoidance is due to a lacking academic skill. Is there a connection between improving literacy skills and behavior skills?
Well, this is not going to come as a surprise to anyone, but a research theory is that as students become more discouraged with school, they act out more often, right? I know that you're not surprised to hear that. Students that struggle with reading can act out in a variety of ways to avoid reading. Sometimes that is avoidance, such as constantly asking to use the restroom or maybe putting their heads down on their desk. Other times they might act like a class clown. And then there are students whose frustration levels will erupt into those classroom disruptions and angry outbursts. For example, I don't like golf. I have tried to learn on several occasions and I'm just really, really bad at it. So I don't go golfing because after a while it just makes me feel bad about myself. Imagine if you had to do something every single day, all throughout the day, that you were really bad at and that made you frustrated and embarrassed. So when we look at students' academic performance and their behaviors, we are able to create a more complete picture of what may be at the root cause of their behavior. And the tiered supports, they both meet in the areas of social emotional well-being and literacy. If we work to support one area while ignoring the other, we may see little or no improvement. When we can put supports in place to support the whole student, that's when we'll see success.
Jennifer, you're absolutely right. It's so important for us to consider ways to support the whole child and to consider the many pieces of the puzzle that might need to be addressed to ensure the highest amount of success possible. We greatly appreciate your time today and thank you for sharing your expertise with us. As we wrap up today's episode, I wanted to ask our listeners to consider what are some things you can do to ensure that your classroom structures throughout your building support the whole child in a way that is safe, predictable, consistent, and positive. Thank you once again for joining us, and if you have any questions, do not hesitate to reach out to any of us on the SSTR5 PBIS team. Until next week, be safe, be well, and remain positive.
Thank you for joining us for our TFI Tuesdays. We hope you'll join again next week to learn about additional TFI features. Until then, be safe, be kind, and be positive.